She said I shouldn't come to Thanksgiving. Said it wasn't personal, just that I didn't fit the image. That's what my mother told me, the night before Thanksgiving. And just like that, I learned the table I helped build year after year, season after season, was no longer mine to sit at. My name is Melissa Grant. I'm 32 years old, live in Seattle, and I own Cascade HVAC, a heating and cooling company I built from the ground up. No inheritance, no investors, just years of crawl spaces, frozen basements, and hands blistered from turning rusted valves in the dark. It's not a glamorous job, but it's mine. And I used to believe that meant something to the people who knew me best. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I had just finished replacing a heat exchanger in an old craftsman house near Capitol Hill. The homeowner, a retired teacher named Mrs. Callahan, handed me a foil-wrapped slice of pumpkin pie and a thermos of cider. "For the road," she said, her smile soft and sincere. "You remind me of my late husband, quiet hands that fix things no one else noticed." I thanked her, touched in a way I hadn't expected. Sometimes, it's the strangers who offer the grace your family forgets. Driving home, I let the heater hum low as the skyline flickered in the fading light. The truck smelled faintly of steel and cinnamon. I smiled, thinking of the mismatched china, the overstuffed table, the way my mom folded cloth napkins into little fans the way her father, my Grandpa Joe, once taught her. I called her, still in a good mood. "Hey, Mom," I said, cheerful. "Mashed potatoes or apple pie this year?" "I can bring both." A pause. Too long to be about recipes. Too sharp to be about forgetfulness. "Melissa," her voice quivered. "I need to tell you something." I braced. "It's Chloe," she continued. "Mason's parents are coming to Thanksgiving, and they're very formal. Chloe wants everything to look polished. Polished." I pulled over. Let the engine idle. My cider was still warm in the cup holder. I didn't touch it. "You mean she doesn't want me there?" I said quietly. "No, that's not what this is. Because I work with my hands. Because I wear steel-toed boots instead of suede heels." Her silence confirmed it. And suddenly, I wasn't just uninvited, I was exposed. Not for anything I'd done, but for everything I was. I stared at the dashboard. Above it, my sun visor still held a picture of Grandpa Joe. Grease on his cheek. Wrench in hand. He once told me, "These hands build more than heat, they build lives." But somewhere along the way, my family stopped seeing the builder. They only saw the boots. "I understand," I said finally, voice calm. "Tell Chloe I hope her dinner sparkles." I hung up before she could answer. Not out of anger, but because I realized if your worth only exists in private, it doesn't exist at all. That night, sleep never showed up. I sat curled in the corner of my couch, still in my work pants, the soft throw blanket Mom crocheted me years ago pulled tight around my shoulders. It still smelled like cedar and dryer sheets, like the version of her I used to believe in. Outside, the wind clawed at the windows. Inside, it was silent, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that whispers, "You've been erased." My phone sat screen down on the coffee table. I hadn't touched it since the call. I already knew what waited. Group texts about stuffing, photos of the dining room without me, people acting like my seat had never been there to begin with. But then it buzzed. Once. Twice. A third time. I flipped it over, not with hope, but with instinct. A text from Madison, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever looked me in the eye like I belonged. "Mel, I didn't want to send this, but you need to see it." Attached was a screenshot. Chloe told Mom she didn't want Mason's parents knowing her sister's still a blue-collar worker. She said you'd ruin the image. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, staring at words that didn't surprise me, but still sliced like they were brand new. Across the room, on the kitchen counter, was the green folder. "Chloe, Columbia," scrawled across the front in my handwriting. I'd written it when she got in. Proud. Hopeful. Inside were 6 years of tuition receipts, housing invoices, textbook lists, proof of every birthday I skipped, every weekend I worked overtime, so she wouldn't have to worry. I opened it with shaking hands. Right on top, an invoice. $18,740. Due in 13 days. And then, wedged between pages like a time capsule, her old thank you card.
She was 18.
Columbia bound. For the laptop. And everything else. You're my hero, Mel. I'll never forget this. I stared at the fading ink. Back then, she'd meant it. Or maybe I just needed to believe she did. My eyes flicked back to the phone, to the message that burned through that memory like acid. You'd ruin the image. That's all I was now, a blemish to cover, a wrinkle to iron out, a name she whispered away. I stood slowly, the folder still in my hand, and walked past the coat rack. There, hanging quietly, was the wool scarf Chloe gave me when she was 16. You always look cold, she'd said, tucking it around my neck. I touched it now, the fabric soft but no longer comforting, just heavy, like grief that wouldn't speak its name. This wasn't about Thanksgiving. It wasn't about dinner rolls or cranberry sauce. This was about being scrubbed out of someone's story. Someone you built a life around. That afternoon, just before I'd gotten the message, I had helped an older man, Mr. Torres, reboot a failed heat pump in a drafty basement. The job took longer than quoted. He gave me lukewarm tea in a chipped mug and showed me pictures of his daughter. Before I left, he pressed a folded 20 into my palm and said, "You remind me of her, always fixing what the world forgets."
I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now?
Now it hit deeper than anything Chloe had said in years. That night, as the wind howled outside and the silence thickened around me, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened the green folder, and stared at the tuition balance like it was a lit fuse. And I thought, maybe the real betrayal isn't being uninvited. Maybe it's realizing you funded your own disappearance. The morning came gray and quiet, the kind of sky that feels like a held breath, waiting, uncertain, still. I sat at the kitchen table in my old wool sweater, the one I wore through every lean winter, the one Chloe once called too scratchy for photos. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I kept holding it, like I was waiting for the warmth to come back. Like I hadn't realized yet. It wasn't going to. Across the table lay the green folder. Chloe, Columbia. My handwriting. A label I made 6 years ago, when I thought all of this, every tuition check, every skipped vacation, every sleepless night, was an investment in something bigger than just her future. I thought it was an investment in us. I opened the folder one more time. Right on top, the tuition invoice. $18,740. Due in 13 days. Below it, a receipt from the first semester. Then another. And another. Each one bearing my name, my card number, my silent, "I'll figure it out," scribbled on the back in grocery store pen ink. She never knew about those scribbles. Never asked how I managed. Just knew the bills were paid. And in between those pages, almost hidden, was her old thank you note. "Mel, you're my hero. I mean it. I love you always." I ran my thumb across the fading ink. There was a time those words meant the world.
But now?
Now they felt like a postcard from a place that no longer existed. I opened my laptop and typed in Columbia's portal. Username, Melissa C. Grant. Password, same one I've used for 6 years. Her student profile blinked onto the screen. She was smiling in the photo, hair curled, scarf perfect, lips glossed just enough to impress a new world she was eager to belong to. A world I'd paved the road to, but was never allowed to walk beside her in. I scrolled down. There it was. Card on file. Visa ending in 7229. Name, Melissa C. Grant. I hovered over the red link. Remove payment method. A small window popped up. Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the tears had already been spent on years of silence. I wasn't just removing a card. I was removing a version of myself. The one who always showed up, no matter how invisible I became. The one who believed love would eventually look back and say thank you. I clicked yes. Another prompt. This will cancel all scheduled payments. Are you sure? I whispered it out loud this time.
Yes.
I'm sure. The soft ping that followed wasn't loud. But inside me, it echoed like a door finally closing. Not slammed, just sealed. An hour later, my phone began to buzz.
Chloe.
Then Mom. Then Chloe again. Mel, what did you do? The school says the payment's gone. Call me back.
Please.
You're scaring her. You promised. I didn't answer. Because here's the thing no one teaches women like me, women who give and give and give. When your love is only welcome as long as it funds the fantasy, it was never love. It was a transaction. And today I chose to close the account. That afternoon, I showed up at the Quinn and Harris law offices for a retrofit inspection. Marble floors, polished wood, security badges at every door. I tightened a rusted panel in the boiler room, while the suits upstairs made deals over catered lunch. I didn't envy them, because I know what warmth really feels like. It's in the hum of a furnace on a cold day. It's in the thank you from someone who sees you, not someone who just uses you. When I stepped out to check airflow in the main lobby, my phone buzzed again. It was Mom. I answered. Her voice cracked with urgency. Melissa. She's sobbing. She says you're ruining her life. You have to fix this. I closed my eyes, not to block her out, but to remember the girl I used to be, the one who always fixed everything, quietly, invisibly. I spoke softly. I've fixed enough for one lifetime, Mom. It's time she learns how to stand without me holding the ground steady. There was a long silence on the line. Then, like always, the guild arrived, wrapped in the voice that once sang lullabies. You've changed. I looked out the window. Rain was sliding down the glass like silver threads unraveling from a storm cloud. And I said it gently.
No, Mom.
I've just stopped disappearing. 3 days passed in a strange, unfamiliar silence. No more frantic calls. No long voicemails from Mom layered with guilt. No texts from Chloe alternating between apology and accusation. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a new sound when your whole life has been noise, duties, expectations, and the never-ending rustle of being needed, but never really seen. I spent those days doing what I always do, showing up. Furnace inspections. Emergency heating calls. Writing bids with grease under my nails. The rhythm of work grounded me. Not because it distracted me, but because it reminded me who I was outside of their need for me. And just when I started to think maybe they'd accepted it, maybe my decision to step back would be honored, Madison called. Mel, she said, her voice low, urgent. Have you heard? My chest tightened. Heard what? She hesitated. Chloe showed up at Jordan's house this morning. Mason's friend. Or a ex-friend now. I set my wrench down. What happened? Mason found out the truth. About the tuition. About everything. I didn't say a word. Just listened, while the edges of the kitchen seemed to blur around me. She let him believe Mom and Dad paid for Columbia, Madison continued. For 2 whole years. He thought you were just some estranged sister, someone who disappeared after high school. Someone who didn't matter. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. It didn't hurt like I thought it would. Not sharp. Just cold. Like stepping barefoot onto tile in winter, a truth that chills instead of cuts. He found out, Madison said softly, because Chloe said something at a party. She called you her blue-collar background, said she had to work hard to overcome where she came from. Jordan heard her. He couldn't believe it. He told Mason everything. I swallowed. That phrase, blue-collar background, lingered in the air like smoke. There was a time she used to brag that her sister built HVAC systems. Now I was a blemish, a footnote, a backstory to rewrite. She told him you didn't matter, Madison whispered. But he looked into it. He asked questions. When he found out it was you who paid for Columbia, Madison didn't finish.
She didn't have to.
Because I already knew the rest. That afternoon, I went to Gus's diner, one of my first ever HVAC clients. Back in the day, I'd printed invoices from the public library and carried tools in a plastic bin from the dollar store. Gus recognized me the moment I walked in. He poured me coffee, without asking. slid a slice of cherry pie across the counter, and said, "Heard about that big hotel bid. Proud of you, kid. You've come a long way." I nodded, unable to speak. Because sometimes, it's the people who owe you nothing who end up giving you everything you needed to hear. When I got back to the office, there was an email waiting. Subject: Columbia University, payment method removed. Student: Chloe Grant. Tuition status: unpaid. Action required by January 10th to avoid withdrawal. I didn't forward it.
Didn't screenshot it.
Didn't warn anyone. I just stared at the blinking cursor. For the first time in a decade, her future wasn't something I had to carry. That night, another message from Chloe popped up. "Mel, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it."
Please talk to me.
Then another. "You're ruining everything." I sat at the kitchen table, phone glowing beside a half-finished cup of tea. The scarf she gave me at 16 still hung by the door. I hadn't thrown it out, but I no longer needed it to stay warm. Across the street, I saw Mrs. Callahan step outside with her umbrella, waving to a neighbor. She caught my eye and smiled. A quiet smile. No pity. No judgment. Just the kind of smile that says, "I see you, and I know you're more than what they say." Back in my inbox, a new email had arrived from the Mockingbird Book Club. A photo was attached. 5 women, some gray-haired, some not, holding well-worn paperback copies of To Kill a Mockingbird, grinning at the camera. Beneath it, a short handwritten note. "Can't wait to hear your thoughts." People who build things tend to notice what the world tries to hide. I leaned back in my chair. Not vindicated. Not victorious. Just finally real. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't ashamed of where I came from. Because I built something that no spotlight could erase. And I had finally stopped apologizing for it.
It was just past 6 when the doorbell rang.
Outside, the sky had folded into dusk. A soft rain had started again, quiet, steady, the kind that blurred porch lights into little halos. I was at the kitchen counter, sorting invoices, the scent of roasted vegetables lingering from dinner. The radio hummed low, jazz, something old and familiar. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Chloe stood there, soaked, hair clinging to her cheeks, mascara trailing faint shadows beneath her eyes. She looked less like the woman in her Columbia ID photo and more like the child I used to piggyback through pumpkin patches in October. But there was no innocence in her face now, just panic and a kind of desperation that wasn't rooted in love, but in fear of losing control. "I need to talk," she said. I stepped out and gently pulled the door closed behind me. "This is my home, Chloe," I said quietly. "You don't get to walk in just because things fell apart." Her lip quivered. "You cut me off." I didn't answer right away. Across the street, Mrs. Callahan stepped outside with her evening tea, paused under her awning.
She saw us.
She didn't intrude, just stayed. Present. A reminder that not all family is bound by blood. "You cut me off," Chloe repeated. "Like I meant nothing to you." I exhaled, slow and steady.
"No."
I cut off the silence. "The kind where I pay for your world while you erase me from it." She flinched. "You let people believe I was gone," I continued. "You let Mason think I wasn't part of your story, that I was something to be outgrown. But Chloe, I was the scaffolding under every piece of your future. I didn't ask for praise. I never needed a thank you parade. But I won't be buried quietly either." Her voice cracked. I was scared. I thought they'd judge me. I nodded. "Maybe they would have. But you judged me first." The scarf she gave me years ago, wool, navy, slightly frayed at the edge, still hung by the door. I had folded it that morning without even thinking, the way you do with something that was once tender, but is no longer needed. "You said I embarrassed you," I said. "You told them I work with my hands, that I'm blue-collar. Well, I am. These hands fixed every leak in your first apartment. They installed the heater in your dorm. They wrote every check that got you through Columbia." Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to come to this. I looked at her, not with anger, but with something older, wiser, tired. It didn't come to this, Chloe. You walked us here. One silent moment at a time. A gust of wind swept the porch, catching the edges of her coat. She looked so small suddenly. And I thought, even when people hurt us, part of us still wants to reach out. But reaching out without being seen isn't connection. It's surrender. So what now? She asked, her voice barely audible. You're just going to walk away? I shook my head gently.
No.
I'm not walking away. I'm walking back to myself. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to plead. But I held up a hand.
Soft.
Firm. You don't get to rewrite me, Chloe. Not in their eyes. Not in yours. And not in mine. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she turned and walked down the steps, heels splashing in the puddles, a woman who had been caught not in a lie, but in the unraveling of her own invention. I didn't close the door behind her right away. I stood there, breathing in the rain, the dusk, the quiet. Across the street, Mrs. Callahan raised her mug in a silent gesture. I nodded back. My chest hurt, but not from regret.
From release.
When I stepped back inside, the house was still. On the table sat a thank you note from my lead tech's daughter, crayon hearts, and a shaky, "Thank you, Miss Melissa, for fixing our heat." Next to it, a thermos from Ruth at the law office. A simple card. You've given people more than warm homes. You've given them dignity. That night, I lit a single candle on the kitchen table. Not for her. Not for the pain. But for me. Because sometimes, peace isn't something they give you. It's something you choose, even if it means letting go of the people you once held on to the hardest. The office was quiet the next morning. Not the kind of quiet that follows an argument. The kind that comes after a long storm, when the sky is still gray, but the air feels clean. My team moved with purpose, double-checking thermostats, reviewing blueprints for the hotel retrofit, brewing strong coffee in the break room. No one asked about Chloe. No one whispered about what happened. But I felt it. In the way Eric nodded when I walked in. In the thermos already waiting on my desk. In the quiet trust that says, you don't need to explain. We see who you are. That evening, I came home to a blinking voicemail light. It was Mom. "Melissa," she said, her voice frayed with something between panic and pleading. "Chloe's not herself. She says you've turned your back on her. She says she might lose her last semester. Please, please don't do this. Don't let it end like this." I stood in my kitchen, leaning on the counter, listening to the words roll through the space like fog. She wasn't asking for a conversation. She was asking for the version of me who always said yes. A second call came in. I answered. "Melissa," she started again, "you have to understand. She made a mistake. She's young. You were young once too." I looked out the window. The porch light I'd installed myself glowed gently in the mist, warm, steady, quiet. And for the first time I realized I didn't owe anyone a second chance that cost me my dignity. I gave her a future, I said softly. But she chose to build it without me in it. And I can't keep funding a story where I don't exist. There was a long silence. Then came the line I'd heard so many times it barely stung anymore. "You've changed." I smiled, faint but real. "I've grown." That's not the same thing. And I ended the call, not in anger, but in peace. A few days later, a small package arrived at my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. The return label read, Mockingbird Book Club. Inside was a hardcover copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, its spine soft from love. Tucked inside was a handwritten card. "For our newest member. You notice what others miss. That's what makes you remarkable." I placed it on the shelf in my living room, right between Grandpa Joe's old rusted wrench and the folded scarf Chloe gave me when she still remembered who I was. Not out of bitterness. Not even nostalgia. But because some memories don't need to be erased. They just need to rest in the past where they belong. Of course, the backlash came. Aunt Carol, Uncle Jeff, even a high school friend I hadn't heard from in years sent a message. "You really cut off your sister? She counted on you. Family is family." But I didn't respond. Because sometimes the only answer left is your silence. And sometimes silence is not empty. It's earned. That Thanksgiving, I wasn't sitting at a linen-draped table with polite conversation and cold judgment. I was downtown, volunteering at the community center, handing out pumpkin muffins and cider. A woman named Mrs. Lee, a retired librarian, took my hand and smiled. First Thanksgiving in America, I was all alone, she said. Church basement. No one spoke my language. But someone brought me pie. I never forgot that. She looked at me, not as a savior, not as a technician, not as someone who had been disinvited from her own family, but as someone present. You showing up today, she said. That's what matters. That's what makes this a real holiday. That night, I walked home in my moss green sweater, the one I bought secondhand but loved like it came from Paris. The wind was cold, but it didn't bite. My porch light was on, golden and soft. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine. The shelf by the window held Grandpa Joe's toolbox, the worn book club copy, and a little angel figurine, glass, delicate, something Mom had once tucked into my Christmas stocking. I'd kept it.
Not to hold on,
but to remember who I was before they forgot. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Christmas isn't the same without you. Please call. I stared at it for a long while. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just stillness. Then I set the phone down, poured a cup of tea, and curled into the couch I'd bought myself with the first profit I ever made. And I thought, this is enough. This is peace. This is mine.